to Caribbean Connections, Caribbean Airlines Thought Leadership Series, where we sit and chat with leaders from throughout the region and the diaspora about their journeys and their vision for the Caribbean. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Mr. Langston Roach, who for almost 40 years has built his company from a garage operation into a successful group of companies spanning over 120,000 square feet. His companies are based in Trinidad and Tobago. The Langston Roach group of companies includes Langston Roach Industries Limited, Lazari Apparel Limited, LRI Automotive Limited, Roach Capital Investment Limited, and Rohan Marketing Limited. Join us now as we hear his inspiring story. Mr. Roach, yours is a riveting journey. But more than that, you made an enterprise of yourself. Give us some insight into the man, and more so, the mind behind the business.
If I go way back, I was born in South Trinidad and grew up in La Brea. My mother's father was a mechanic, and he's also the transport go-to man in La Brea because he owned cars. Back in the 20s and 30s when cars were not fashionable. When she and my father got married, she was a nurse, or she became a nurse shortly after. When she had her first child, she left nursing and became a stay-at-home mom. So by the time, I'm the second child. But I grew up in a house in which my mother was always doing something to supplement my father's public service income. She was sewing, she was making cakes and icing them for weddings. She was teaching people pattern making and design. We always had a yard full of goats. We had a garden, we had chickens, we had ducks, we had turkeys. There was always something going on in and around the household to supplement, right, the income that was being earned outside of the household. So there is an entrepreneurial background in my family. And there's a funny story. I was asked somewhere around 8 or 9 what I wanted to be when I grew up. They normally ask you these things in primary school. And I wrote that I wanted to be a taxi driver. And there was a simple explanation for this. The taxi driver's car was bigger than my father's. So I always, in the back of my head, felt I could earn my own income. Yes. Let's put it that way. Right? And then we could get into at university getting into the Black Power movement, there was I was an engineering student, which was an oxymoron at the time. But I was on the Guild Council. I was in charge of Guild Publications. Right? So when this whole thing started up with the protest against the Canadian governor that was coming here, to open Canada Hall at UWI. In the background of their treating the black Caribbean students at George, I think it's McGill, one of these universities, very badly. And we protested at the gate to block his entry. And that is the whole thing that spurred into the Black Power movement. When that whole thing started up, I was an engineering student. And that concretized in my mind why I couldn't just go out in the society after graduating and work for the white elite. And I decided that I'll go into build my own business. And I had the background from my home and from my grandparents.
That is an excellent segue into our next question. You have been very vocal about the challenges that Afro-Trinbagonians face when having to set up business, when having to face the financial institutions. Has that changed between then and now?
Yes and no. If we go back to 1970, the public service and state enterprises were staffed by black people. But when one went into private enterprise, the positions held by black people were the minor positions, porter, messenger, and the rest of the entire staff, whether it's the banks, the insurance companies, and other private companies, were mainly white. So that has changed in that you go into these companies now and you see black people in all positions. We still have a problem of accessing financing for black-owned businesses. And to my mind, it's understandable because we haven't set up the institutions other than banks to make this possible. We have to understand that banks are lending other people's money and they're very risk averse. So some state organization needs to set up a proper institution or institutions that will overcome this hurdle for wannabe entrepreneurs that don't have the asset structure to secure this kind of funding. And that is probably one of the major hurdles now. Another one is lack of proper entrepreneurial training. Our entire educational system is geared towards getting you out with a piece of paper, an accreditation, that allows you to go look for a job. It's not geared to help you develop the mindset to go into business. Again, it's a risk-adverse education.
Yes.
Go look for a job, go get a secure income so you could pay your bills and grow a family. Entrepreneurship is something that's quite different. And we're not conditioning minds of young people, or even in some cases, older people, to accept that sort of, let me call it a challenge.
In a career as extensive as yours, what have been some of the most enduring lessons that you've learned along the way? But more so, what guidance and advice can you give to up-and-coming entrepreneurs who face some of the challenges that you've outlined?
The first lesson I learned is that you have to be very clear-minded that that is what you want to do. And that goes to your mindset and it goes to your reasoning. Right? I wanted to disprove a myth that black people can own and run a business and build a business. That was very clear in my mind coming out of 1970.
That's powerful motivation.
That was very clear in my mind. The second thing is that I wanted to be able to send my children to the university of their choice when that time came, because I was not able to go to the university of my choice, which would have been to a university in the States, Princeton in particular, to do industrial engineering and business management. It was a double degree. So I ended up in UB doing chemical engineering. And I think I was so easily distracted because I was doing what I did not want to do. So you have to have your mindset that that's what you want to do. And coming out of that, you have to have a clear goal. Right? So my goals were to disprove a myth, and the other goal was to set myself up financially so I could give my children the best education that I wanted to. But there are other things along the way, because it's not an easy road. There are hills and valleys, there are bumps. You have to be very focused, very clear that this is what you want to do, so that when you meet these hurdles, you could look for a way around them or look for a way over them, or you could look for some solution to the challenge, because you're going to get a lot of challenges. The financial challenges is one, right? You have to equip yourself with the other skill sets, or surround yourself with people with the other skill sets to supplement your own. You've got to know something about financing and accounting and marketing and people management and this sort of stuff. Apart from your core skill, which is making a product or delivering whatever service you're going to deliver as part of your core business. There are other things that you need to learn to this. In my case, I equipped myself personally and I learned most of it. So I didn't have to go through the expense of securing it outside.
So essentially, you learned the functional aspects of the business, which really are enablers, and they are critical success factors in molding and giving structure to your thoughts.
Yes, I mean, I had an engineering background, a science background. I'm very mathematical, right? I learned accounting through support of my mother in one of her businesses. In prior years, I learned sales. I'm very strongly sales inclined. And I'm a people person. I mean, I was a captain of a football team in QRC, right? I was in the swimming team. I was on the badminton team in QRC, right? So that people thing gave me the HR edge, how to deal with people, how to motivate people, how to lead people. And I did an accounting course at, I think then it was the Productivity Center in Port of Spain. And I learned as much as I could in terms of, because in the early days, I formulated and made the products myself.
So as we continue our discussion, which I am thoroughly enjoying, the insight into your motivation, you're quoted as saying that when you work for someone, limits are set for you. Can you share some of your views on employee satisfaction and empowerment, because employers need employees?
That's true, and there will always be an accessible source of employees, because like I said, most people are risk adverse, so they prefer to go into a job and be assured of an income, whether it's daily, weekly, or monthly. But one has to create an environment in which you get the best out of the people, and therefore the best out of the investment in your human resource. So as funny as it may sound, one has to create an intrapreneurial environment within your entrepreneurial company to get the best out of the people, right? Because people want to be appreciated, they want to be remunerated, they want to be motivated, and they want to know that there's some purpose to their work. So the person sweeping the floor or the person filling the bottles must understand that we are satisfying a need for, we make cleaning products, for hygiene, for good health, right? And to deliver value to our consumer that surpasses the value they may get from purchasing another product. People have to understand the basis for their work, no matter how far removed it is from the final consumer that is going to buy the product and use the product for a particular benefit. We have created this sort of environment in our company. We have set up from day one to make people feel respected, to treat people fairly, to let them be motivated. We have a highly productive workforce in an environment in which people say, young people don't want to work. But we have distilled it over the years. It has maybe 1 out of 10, 1 out of 50 have remained. But those that have remained because they have adapted to the kind of environment and workforce that we have. Well, it's still a work in progress that we're still working on every single day.
I must admit that interacting with your employees for the period of time that we have encountered professionalism, motivation, and a very healthy respect. There is that starting position. I mean that from the time we drove in this morning, the gentleman to the front of the yard directing persons as to where, as you enter, hello, good morning, and he directs you to where you need to go. So we are getting that from your human resource base.
Yeah, because we have sold the idea that, okay, we call these people security officers, but they are first greeters. right? They're the first people you meet as you come in the compound, and therefore the first impression, which is formed of the company, is formed through security guards.
And they're doing a good job.
Thank you.
I must tell you.
Thank
They
you.
are, and it's not the first time that I've come to the company. I've come here as a customer, and I've met the same sort of professionalism and clarity of direction.
Thank you.
So well done.
I'll relay that to them.
Yeah. It reminds me of the NASA story where someone asked persons, they were going into the NASA building and they encountered 3 employees. One of them was sweeping the yard, another was doing some landscaping. And the responses they received from them were different. One of them said, when asked, "What do you do here?" He said, "I put people into space." The others commented, "Well, I keep the yard clean and I trim the trees." And from that, you saw 3 different perspectives. But the gentleman who would have said, "I put people into space," he understood the overarching mission of the organization.
That whatever he was doing, however small, was a contribution towards, right, a more significant outcome.
And as we speak to significant outcomes, in the community of San Juan where you are based, you have continued over time to deal with the youth, to carry out different aspects as a corporate citizen, your social responsibility. Can you tell us about some of these initiatives? Because you mentioned young people wanting to work and that being your experience.
Yes. We have a corporate mindset, that's not the correct word, but of hiring from the area. Wherever we can get talent and the people we need from the area, then we give that priority. We go outside of the area in certain disciplines where we can't find that talent locally. So that's the first thing we do. In terms of building the community, we create jobs within the community. So we have maybe 30-40% of our staff, and in terms of our production and distribution staff, a much higher percentage of the company who comes from the Santa Cruz, San Juan, maybe even as far down as Mova, right? And what we have found is that people get to work, of course, easier, and they get home easier. So when we do have to work late, we don't have this objection. But what we have found in a society structured as ours is that that's our wider security blanket. It sounds funny, but if you live in Laventille Road, or you live in Santa Cruz or Lacanau, where there is some gang operating and crime, and somebody decides that they're going to break into Langston Roach Industries tonight, the person sitting down next to him will tell him, "No, my sister works there. My brother works there," right? And that way we get that community support and that security. But more than that, in terms of our CSR, we have always worked closely with the schools. We start there. So the schools always need money for football or netball or uniforms for their sports people and all that. During the pandemic, they needed hand sanitizers, they needed soap. We even supplied the police stations in the area with hand sanitizers and hand washing liquids, right? But more than that, we support the San Juan Jablote. We are part sponsors. We support Panbury. We have helped finance them for their Panama pre-pandemic. We supported the Laventille Police Youth Group, so we have done that. We have done this outside of San Juan as well. During the pandemic, we contributed a lot to hampers, food hampers. I mean, I'm talking about a lot to food hampers in the area over a period of 3 years, right? And the most recent one, well, let me just segue into this. My mother died in April last year. My mother had a church in Lacanau, church that recognizes all denominations. But she did a lot of work in the Lacanau area. She ran a soup kitchen, she fed people, she had a daycare center that operated for a number of years before it was shut down because the building was sold. So what we did subsequent to her passing in April of last year is that I bought a building in Lacanau, retrofitted it, and we have started the Veronica Roach Legacy Project, which is called the Lacanau Improvement Center. And in that center, my sister runs it. There's a homework center. There's senior citizens get-togethers to get them out of their houses. There's free medical counseling. There's free legal counseling. There's cooking. There are cooking classes. There are macrame classes. There are flower making classes. There is a whole range of stuff. And the reason why we do this way is because it's the Lacanau Improvement Center. So it's a totally holistic effort, and this is our major CSR initiative.
What a legacy it is indeed. And I think it is a perfect note for us to close our initial discussion on Langston Roach Industries, Langston Roach, the man.